Here we go.
And I am telling you that that DNA on that sheath next to or underneath one of the victims is enough to sink him.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? You amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. It's Tuesday, baby. It's Tuesday. And this is video 1 of 3. We're not like Domino's over here, baby. We don't stop at 2 for Tuesday. We do 3 for Tuesday. Like I say, better than Domino's. Now, if that ain't worth a subscribe, I don't know what is. And it's my birthday soon. I don't mention it much, but it is. Anyway, let's get straight into the meat and potatoes. As what are we talking about in this video? We're talking about the Idaho 4 case. There's going to be 2 videos talking about the Idaho 4 case today. And then something else at the back end of the day, just as, you know, like them hundreds and thousands. You make a cake, then you sprinkle hundreds and thousands on the top of it. So, again, keep your eyes peeled. Because I'm still getting people emailing me saying, you need to check this out. You need to check this out, like they were talking about the Eisenhower Foundation connection in the Liam Payne case. Done a video about that 2 weeks ago. But anyway, that's by the by. Let's get on with it. Because in this video, as you saw at the beginning there, we're talking about a specific situation in the Idaho 4 case. And that is that, in reality, regardless of what anybody thinks, the only thing that ties Bryan Kohberger to this crime is the knife sheath, the golden goose. The thing that doesn't generally happen, but in this case it just happened to happen. And that is that you got gifted this sheath on a platter with a little bow saying, look, this person did this crime. And he left, basically, he might as well have just sat there, stayed there, done it, and then just sat. It was me. Because a lot of it now, look, this sheath is a hurdle for the defence to get over 100%. For me, it is the only thing that matters in this case, because I see so many people. I was looking at Law and Crime, and looking at their video, which that clip that you saw at the beginning came from, and it's bewildering the amount of people in the comments who are still on the stalking train, which is interesting because this is what Ann Taylor was saying. You know, the PCA was a weapon. That's what that was. Now, Bill Thompson had very early made very, very sure that PCA went out as it was. Send that out, send it far and wide. He was fucking caught. It was filmed saying it. They used it in the court itself. That was there to do a job. To do a job. It was formulated in a fashion that would read as if Bryan Kohberger was a stalker. He was stalking these individuals. His car was caught on camera in the area, and he left a sheath there with his DNA on it. The nails in the coffin lid. That's what that PCA was. And then subsequently, we had a gag order, which then means that nobody gets to see anything else. Nobody gets to see anything else whatsoever. It's just the PCA. And then what happens is media feeds off that. They feed off it and feed off it and feed off it. And they formulate this design of Bryan Kohberger to push out. This is who we're talking about. This is the accused. This is the man. And it's had such a damaging impact on the perception of Bryan Kohberger that people can't let go of falsities, of things that simply aren't true. And in the aftermath of the PCA and through various hearings, they have had to pick things out to literally say, look, this isn't accurate. Even down to, and this is stalking aside, even down to the placement of Bryan Kohberger. Where was Bryan Kohberger, and what evidence do they have to support him being there? Now, people seemingly lose their shit when they can't understand that there was times when Bryan Kohberger's phone had pinged in the area of 1122 King Road, but he weren't there. He was in Washington. People can't get their head round that there's less than 25 miles between where Bryan Kohberger was staying in Washington and 1122 King Road, and how far these cell towers can reach. Their bandwidth, their radius of 25 miles. People can't understand, they can't get their head around it, why it's so important to have the time data analysis on on the phone data analysis. That's why that becomes such an important and integral part of determining where somebody is at any one time and the journey that they took. But that was omitted from the paperwork, the evidence. It wasn't there. So it took a specialist in that field, which obviously the anti-Bryan Kohberger people don't want you to listen to, but ultimately this is a guy, I'm talking about Cy Ray, who has built a career in this industry, and a successful one. And he knows what he's talking about. And he wasn't even taking Bryan Kohberger's side. He was turning around and saying, this data that we have isn't enough to determine whether what you're saying is correct. And if you add the data into this that you can get, it could actually prove that you're wrong. So do it. Do everything. Because at the moment, this is potentially exculpatory evidence. And we did touch on this yesterday. But the point of this video is to say that you guys, this should scare the shit out of you. It really should. You heard at the beginning there, that knife sheath is enough. That knife sheath is enough. That is the only one thing that ties Bryan Kohberger to this crime. And I have to ask you one simple question. One simple question. Do you believe that law enforcement could plant evidence at the scene of a crime? Because I'm telling you now, that happens. Evidence does get planted at crime scenes. 100%. It happens. It happens. So if you're somebody who answered, no, it doesn't happen to that question, you are incredibly naive, or you're just ignoring facts because it benefits you and your mindset in this case. But they can plant evidence. Now, if this was all above board, there was no issues, nothing whatsoever, then why is the defence team still chasing discovery with respect to the IgG analysis? Why isn't it being handed over? Why are they not completely been given everything to just say, look, this is a slam dunk, mate. We've done everything by the book. We've done everything that we should have done. And ultimately, this is the result that it gave us. And yet we hear that when that was originally sent, this knife sheath was originally sent for testing, it came back with no results. It then had to be sent to somewhere else. It would seemingly suggest that they didn't get a result either, and then the FBI stepped in. And then there was this reverse engineering situation to build this tree that would eventually lead to Bryan Kohberger. I still have to ask, why didn't they just approach Bryan Kohberger in the first place? He had a white Hyundai Elantra. Seemingly, they're suggesting that he was seen in the area. They've got an eyewitness, and we'll touch on that later on today. Keep your eyes peeled. Video 2, we're going to go hard on these eyewitnesses. Or was there 2? Or just 1? Or was she dreaming? But this is what I'm saying. With respect of Bryan Kohberger, why didn't they just go to Bryan Kohberger with all these other little things? Just go in and get his DNA. This convoluted, this mishmash of doing things, going across country to get the DNA out of the waste bin, and then every little element is having to be twisted. The stargazing at night on a cloudy night that some fucking idiot still can't understand that that's not what was said. It was always said that Bryan Kohberger was driving around on the night of the crime. Driving around, and that is important to understand. Because if he was open and honest and he had no witnesses, they knew that he had no witnesses that would satisfy the legality of what an alibi entails in the state of Idaho. They knew that he didn't fucking have one. So they know this guy hasn't got an alibi. They know he's just driving around. He's not connected to the university. He's not connected to the area. He comes from Washington, and actually he comes from Pennsylvania. Why not just pull him in and take his DNA? And yet they did all of this other stuff. And then they weaponized a PCA to push out false information. And some of that false information we're going to touch on later on today. But that PCA was not accurate. It wasn't accurate, and it was written in a way they knew exactly what it was going to do, and they instructed it to be spread far and wide because they knew what it was going to do. And again, this should scare you. It should scare you because this could happen to you, or it could happen to one of your loved ones. So again, I leave you with this, with the second asking of this question: do you believe that law enforcement could plant evidence? And as a caveat to that, do you believe that the stakes were high enough in the Idaho 4 case that it could have perhaps prompted somebody to do so? Now, they may not have done it intentionally because they thought that this was just about stitching some guy up. They might have believed that this was the guy, but they didn't have enough. Because there has been multiple people, even the guy who you heard at the beginning there, the rest of that conversation would go on to say that without that knife sheath, it's very, very unlikely that Bryan Kohberger would have had charges laid against him. It took that sheath. That was the tipping point. And why? Because everything else is so fucking weak. So the question here is, how strong is the DNA? How strong is the knife sheath? Remember, we don't have a murder weapon. We have suggestions of multiple weapons used, different styles of injury. And yet we've got this K-bar knife sheath that was the golden goose. And even that in itself is not a fixed item. It's a movable article. It can be moved into the house. It can be moved out of the house. So the DNA would have had to have got onto the sheath, not even in this property, at this time. And let's not forget that Bryan Kohberger had no DNA from the house in his person, on his person, in his property, in his car. That's what we've been led to believe. So nothing. This disastrous sight, this horrendous, heinous act, and yet he walks away completely scot-free. But he left his own DNA on a knife sheath and left that knife sheath in the house, right by a victim. But yet, and a further caveat to all this is that the police wanted to test this knife sheath so much, but yet there was 3 or 4 DNA samples in the immediate vicinity of this crime that they had absolutely no interest in. They weren't even interested in whether there was accomplices in this crime. Ask yourself why. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Mwah.